You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
The Cloud Native Computing Foundation, or CNCF, hosts critical components of the global technology infrastructure, including Kubernetes, Prometheus, and Envoy. CNCF serves as the neutral home for collaboration, bringing together the industry's top developers, end users, and vendors, and running the largest open source developer conferences.
Hey everyone, what will be the big news at KubeCon this year? That's always our question at the New Stack. What's going to be hot? What are the trends that are new? What are the trends that are maturing? So I'm here today with Priyanka Sharma, Executive Director of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and Joseph Sandoval, who is the Principal Product Manager, Platform Engineering at Adobe. And we're going to discuss the cloud native world and what is really hot. And I was chatting a little bit beforehand with Priyanka, and I was thinking about KubeCon in Paris, which earlier I said was last year, but it was actually this year. And I really came away with new insights about how engineers will have to bridge this world of data that's integrating more deeply into the infrastructure software itself. And we saw new emergent projects such as Ray and other ways we think about data, and also the different personas that we're seeing new to the community. And so I wanted to ask Priyanka and Joseph for a little retrospective on what they took away from those shows, because that, I think, provides good context for what we're coming up to now.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. So nice to be here. Thank you for having us, Alex. Paris, yes, it does feel like a lifetime ago, but it was in, end of March. So barely 6 months. I thought that was a show with unprecedented energy. It was the largest KubeCon ever, and it really bridged the gap that in the past has existed between infrastructure communities, data communities, and AI communities. That is by no means to say that the work's done, let's go home, but rather the work started now. So I found it was so much fun talking to folks like Mistral, folks from Gemma, folks from Olama on the keynote stage. These are all names in the AI space. I was talking to all these people on stage, and all of them, without exception, are dealing with infrastructure challenges. And so the writing is on the wall that when it comes to workloads, AI is one more of them, maybe a more complicated one. And we, as the infrastructure folks in this industry, need to learn how to serve them. And as a result, bringing the people closer together, the AI story is a data story. So the better we can manage data pipelines, which I think our project Kubeflow, for example, does really well, the more we can understand our AI engineering counterparts, the better the outcomes will be for the features and products that we deliver into people's hands.
Yeah, I think for myself, KubeCon Paris was amazing. And I think what I love about the keynotes and themes that carried over, Alex, is a lot of what Priyanka has mentioned. We've seen a lot of change that's happened with the generative AI and how it's affecting our community. And yet here is Kubernetes is still being a key scheduler that is supporting these workloads. One thing that I really took away, and this is coming from my end user persona, I always look to KubeCon for early signal. I know I'm also sharing some of the things that we're doing at Adobe. But it was great because then you really got some insights on just where things are at. NVIDIA gave some really good breakdown of what you can do today as well as tomorrow. So going into Salt Lake City, I'm really excited to kind of see how did people take some of this information that came directly? And I know how it's impacted us at Adobe. Other areas that I think were really interesting that we're really starting to develop there was even how do we start to digest these things in our cloud native infrastructure? And you saw some early indications of hey, this is the way that you possibly could start to incorporate. Here's where you would start at if you want to introduce this into your infrastructure. So I found that it was very powerful. And if you look at kind of what's happening in the Cloud Native Compute Foundation and a lot of our communities, it's very reflective, like the things with platform engineering. If you go and work with platforms, tremendous energy there. The AI community really stepped up rapidly. Not only did they churn out papers that were related to what you could consume and have a new landscape that was added for AI, but then you're also kind of seeing other projects start to emerge. So Salt Lake City, I think, is really going to just be a continuation of this amazing story that was shared there.
So how will this get reflected at KubeCon this year? What are some of the emerging trends that we'll see in the programming, Priyanka?
Yes. So at KubeCon Paris, we started a trend of doing themes for each day at KubeCon for the 3 days. And we're continuing that in Salt Lake City. And the first day's theme, in my opinion, is very representative of what we see is happening in the ecosystem. The theme is platform engineering and building AI platforms. So the key thing to notice here is that we have both of these stories on the same day. There's a reason for it, which is that the platform engineering teams are the ones that are being given the call to action to come build the AI platforms for companies, for end users such as Adobe. And we think that's really important information that our attendees need to learn from. And so you'll see that reflected in the first day. We have some very heavy hitter speakers, I'm very proud to say, who reflect, by the way, this exact intersection that I'm talking about. So we have Chen Goldberg, who so many folks in Cloud Native know. She was the leader for engineering at Google for Kubernetes, and now she's SVP of engineering at CoreWeave, which is a big player in infrastructure for AI. She and their CTO are going to be talking about together. We also have Aparna Sinha, another heavyweight OG from Kubernetes, who is now building the AI platform over at CapitalOne, keynoting, and several other awesome folks. So I particularly call out these two women because they are emblematic of the change we are going to see come about in how AI workloads are run. They're run by people with deep expertise and experience in distributed systems and infrastructure. And we're here for that. In the subsequent days, the second day is the perennially important topic of security. And the third day is a final hurrah for the 10 years of Kubernetes.
What are you going to do on that day?
Oh, so much fun there. I don't know, Joseph, can I even tell them about that really fun game thing? You're the coach. Tell me.
Yeah, you can. I think you can probably hint at that fun because that is a pretty exciting closer for the 10-year.
Right. So we're having a Family Feud style show, which Tim Hawken is running. So I think that one's going to be pretty special.
That'll be a lot of fun. So what trends are you watching in platform engineering, Joseph?
Well, platform engineering has just exploded, and it's really exciting to kind of see. And you're seeing where, we're really evolving quite a bit with it. Previously, if you look at like the last KubeCon or even the one before that, we really started to see the platform engineering maturity model like get published. The concept of platform as product really became strong, that we're really focusing on, like doing the research and frameworks and guidelines that help emphasize the user needs and experience, which is very important, so that we're really kind of like making sure that persona is able to kind of remove some of that friction. Now, what am I looking forward to? Well, I see when the community, the things that are really being talked about, and we're seeing it in the conference tracks, is areas where like people are starting to prototype these platform things where they're showcasing some of the best practices and guiding platform implementation for various use cases. You see projects like Canoe, the Backstack. So we're not just saying, here's some of the cloud native projects. We're actually showing you the way, which is helping others to be able to contribute to this. Capability domains being defined so that, we can really understand the language that we all speak. Why we were doing this is so that when we talk about APIs, security, observability, having that standardized terminology is really going to help us to continue that collaboration in the platform engineering space. And so if I had to say the trends I'm seeing there, it's really that user-centric, standardized, scalable platform solutions that are coming out of this working group. That really speaks to the maturity of what's happening here.
So what's the intersection then of platform engineering, Kubernetes / cloud native technologies, and generative AI?
Well, I think that's an area where if you looked at like Paris, I think there was a couple interesting things that I took away from there that I'm looking here in Salt Lake City as well. We realize that a lot of us at scale, like there is some challenges with like, how do I manage all this infrastructure in an efficient way? I would say the parallel analogy I would kind of look at is what is one of the things that's really being disruptive today in just generative AI? And it's like code editors. Look what's happening there. It's improving developer velocity, developer productivity. It's not replacing people today, but really what it's doing is allowing you to do better work. It's allowing you to get more done. And so the same thing I'm seeing is that, can we do the same thing with our infrastructure? Can we make it easier to find signals in observability? Can we do it so that we can actually manage more at scale? And so when I look at what Intuit was discussing in Paris, that was some of the early things that they were like talking about. Could we use AI to help make the jobs and roles of individuals who are SRE and DevOps more efficient, less toil, and just be able to really kind of have more insights and being able to provide more value to their business? So I look at this intersection of really allowing us to kind of get something in a similar way with like these code editors. I see the same thing going to happen in infrastructure, and we'll see the introduction across the board in our platforms.
Has this thematic breakdown, Priyanka, also been carried over to any other parts of the conference?
So the keynotes will definitely represent this. And then a lot of the ancillary programming that we do. So for example, this time round, we are hosting table topics for lunches, and the table topics each day will be based on these themes. And I think these themes have been really a sanity driver for all of us organizing the conference, because as you're making decisions for what goes in a certain day versus not, you can lean back on these and then make the choices that you're going to make. So you'll see it infused through and through. By no means are these themes exclusive themes. It's not like you're not going to hear a peep about security or a peep about observability, for that matter, on different days. It's just a theming so that we have a guidance for folks to have a narrative to follow.
So, Joseph, what kind of community aspects of KubeCon do you look forward to? And what do you expect these themes will help with? And how will you continue to foster that growth in the community that's become such a hallmark of the KubeCon world?
So I think that's the one thing that is great about KubeCon, is that it is really the community that has made it what it is today. There's all this great content, and the CNCF has done amazing with it. But, if you ask me, like, if outside of my co-chair responsibilities, the one thing I love to go to is I love the SIG updates. I love to really get into the core of what's happening into those projects, because right there, you're really directly face to face with like a lot of maintainers. But one thing that I would encourage everyone to look at is there's a really good talk at KubeCon that's related to our maintainers, some of the burdens that they carry. I know we talk about this a bit. It's important for us to kind of look at. I know recently there's been some hot takes around, open source and, it's a marketing fail or whatever. But really, to be honest, there's a lot of people doing a lot of heavy lifting. And so I think what's important is, finding ways to kind of learn more about how you can get more involved in the conference and the communities. And I would say, dig into some of these SIGs, dig into what I think, Priyanka was mentioning. We have one thing that I think that's a hidden gem that we started in Paris, and that is with George Castro doing these great tours of our project pavilion. And it's just, he just breaks it down and allows you to kind of meet these maintainers and really get to know what's happening behind the scenes. And I know from us at Adobe, that's been really a strategic success for us, is the more closely we've aligned with our projects, the better outcomes we've had with being able to, one, drive back some of the problem spaces we're finding, helping the maintainers understand it, finding ways where we can actually contribute as well. And that has been this really interesting dynamic for us. But I encourage others to kind of take that thing and leverage some of these areas where they can also benefit and draft off, and then eventually also potentially be contributing and an active contributor in the community.
100% agree with what Joseph said. The Project Pavilion is just a hoot. So go just for the fun of it. George Castro has become the most exciting pavilion leader, so to speak. He does project tours, which are so fun, and they really pull people in. So don't worry if you don't know the details of this project or that project. That's why you're there. You're going to meet people and learn more. And I think to Joseph's points, that one is a must-do in your checklist. I think another element to know is about the technical advisory board. The end user technical advisory board is a new body that is of equal weight to the governing board and the technical oversight committee in CNCF. Joseph is actually a member of that too. And I'm very excited for the announcements they're going to make at KubeCon as well, because this is a group of end users who are taking leadership to talk about what reference architectures work, what is the success story of, let's say, generative AI features in infrastructure. And they are putting together a voice that can speak cohesively for the end user community. And what I've found is I have a lot of conversations with end users of different stages of their journey. And a lot of questions that they ask, they are going to be reflected with answers in the initiatives the tab is taking. So if you're an end user, it's in your best interest to go introduce yourself, learn what this group is doing so that you can get on their radar for what your organization's needs are. This body is just for you.
Yep, that's great that you brought that up. I totally forgot to mention that I'm part of that board. We have some artifacts that I think a lot of end users are going to find very interesting. I really appreciate the CNCF's kind of shepherding with this group. One thing that we are doing that I will share is that we will be publishing out reference architectures, and that one thing the CNCF has been very clear about is they're not a kingmaker with a lot of these projects. But there's some pragmatism with this as an end user. We do sometimes use closed source projects, open source projects, and we want to really be able to kind of provide a really clear, transparent overview of some of the things that we use. And so in some of these reference architectures, it is really where the rubber hits the road. Like, we're sharing how we're getting these things done. So we really want to be able to kind of up level and not just be, yes, I work for a large scale company, but I was able to kind of benefit from the open source community. This is one way as an end user, I feel that we strongly can be able to help other groups, depending on what size they are, they will get benefits from it. So really excited to be able to kind of bring this to market here at KubeCon Salt Lake City.
So for end users, for a while, there was like a group of people who were like the end user group, right? They were almost like ambassadors for the end user group. I don't see that as much anymore. So I'm curious on how you're going to is that, I guess part of the reference architecture effort is to do that, but are you going to try to, give these people a higher profile so you can start to find more ways to get them into the community?
So the end user tab is, as I said, equal weightage to the technical oversight committee, the governing board, and you're going to see them on the keynote stage. These folks are the official representatives, so to speak. And that doesn't mean the other end user activities are stopping. The user groups that you're referencing, they continue to exist, actually. There's the research user group, which has actually done a ton of work around batch workloads and training, AI training workloads on Kubernetes. There is, there's been financial services, there's transportation, all kinds. But these are closed groups because they have to be, so that the folks can come together and comfortably have conversations. The tab, on the other hand, can be externally facing. That is the role. And so you'll hear a lot from them in the coming month, years. And I have to say, especially the reference architectures that Joseph mentioned, I've been in this job 4.5 years. I've been in this community 9 years, as long as it's been around. People have been asking for reference architectures from CNCF since time immemorial. And finally, we found a way to provide the guidance without being kingmakers. And so this, I think, will be a huge impact. Another thing that is continuing on is the CNCF end user radars. They were very impactful, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, you're bringing those back.
Yes, they are coming back bigger and better.
Okay.
So they'll be a little different than what they were before. And right now, I think there's a survey out for folks to take to inform the design of the radars, but they're coming back. And so all our energy is pushing out. We were in a lot of build phase, I would say, on the end user program in the last year. And now it's bearing fruit. And you'll see that in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I think that what definitely from an end user perspective, Alec, I was going to say one thing I would encourage like end users, like, well, first, Taylor Dolezal has always been this really great unofficial ambassador to end users. He's always seeking us out. I always say, if you're an end user, make sure you check his keynote. Once again, it's going to be something that's going to really speak to our end users. The other thing is, Priyanka mentioned kind of a few of the things, but it's interesting to watch some of our working groups, like working group platforms, for example, where they're actually looking to interview end users. You're seeing the same thing with like our AI groups where like we're taking input directly, like we're really trying to get closer to the signal. And one of the projects that I'm working on in the end user technical advisory board is really trying to make it easier to get input into projects from end users so they don't have to navigate all the 10, 20, 30 projects that they may be working with. Could we kind of make that a little bit more simplified, more consistent? And we're working closely with some of the major project names to be able to kind of pilot this, but it's with the goal to just really kind of like close the gap and just make it a lot simpler for them to provide their input and feel heard.
So just for a last question, I believe Kubernetes has become boring. I think it's pretty evident in the APIs, for example. But with that boredom comes the question about what's the future of a boring infrastructure, and so I'm curious on your thoughts on that, each of you.
Sure. So, a year ago or a year and a half ago, I would say Kubernetes has stabilized, gotten boring, and it's having its Linux moment. It continues to be those things, but there's a new fizz of energy, I would say, and that's come from these large-scale AI workloads. The community has really stepped up to find ways to make the infrastructure story cohesive with Kubernetes across all kinds of workloads that include AI workloads. So there's a ton of work going on in Working Group Batch. There's a ton of work going on amongst people who are trying to make training workloads that run on Slurm work on Kubernetes. There is all kinds of efforts going on. And so these days, things are not feeling very boring to me. At the same time, we can enjoy the stability of Kubernetes and that our distributed systems at scale are working, products are shipping. So it's a very, very good moment in time to be in.
Yeah, I'm with Priyanka. I actually gave a talk last year at one of our pre-days, and it was a separate project, but it was isovalent, something that we use, Cilium, and basically I declared them boring, and I wanted them to be boring. In my world, I don't want all the, I want innovation, but I love where Kubernetes is at. It is really delivering business value, and for us, that is important. But as far as like the things like Priyanka mentioned, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things. I'm really excited to finally see where we feel very close with things like WASM is starting to become really a thing in our infrastructure. Just seeing now slowly serverless is starting to emerge back. And so some of these things are old, are becoming new again, but yet in these new innovative ways and being able to really solve some of our really challenging business problems. And then our old tried and true security, which we're going to have, on the second day, seeing some of these things where the friction is starting to be reduced down. We're starting to get really clear signal. Like those are things that they're boring, but yet to me, they're really exciting. They're the things that keep your eye on to be able to really bring back. And you'll be able to now, here we get all this great, exciting things announced at KubeCon, but now you're starting to see it emerge into varying infrastructure, environments. So to me, that is great. It's a great space to be in. And as you mentioned earlier, like, yes, this is boring, but the Kubernetes API, like if you think about it, you're seeing all these. If you want to really see some of the emerging things, there's an emerging track that I would say go take a look at because it's challenging. Even as I was reviewing some of this early on, selecting content, it was challenging even for me to think like, wow, people are doing this with the Kubernetes API, or they're extending it with projects like KCP, or you're watching Crossplane. And it is exciting to kind of see. So it may be considered boring, but there's a lot of exciting under the hood.
Just to add to that, I think, Kubernetes is a representation of the people that have built it. It's the community, right? And the community right now, we are fighting in a good way because we are fighting to ensure that this way of delivering products in the hands of our users stays resilient, stays reliable, stays something that has business value. And I think there are so many narratives out there at the moment of like, there's this other way of doing infrastructure. We will like totally have to build things in a different manner now. And this community is saying, no, we have to build on our successes, stand on the shoulders of giants that have come before. And I think that gives this community the energy that it thrives best in, which is when we're trying to demonstrate a success and show how people can work together effectively and collaboratively. So we're back in that moment, and it's great.
Great. Well, thank you both for your time, and we'll see you in Salt Lake.
See you then.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.